someone must have been very upset.
Do you still live in the North End?
No, I live here. I haven't lived in the North End in 50 years. More than that.
There's a kid you were in Smithfield, weren't you?
I was. I actually, as a kid, I was on Flora Avenue,
Oh.
and then Smithfield, and
Okay.
then Iris, and then I left the city.
I was in Smithfield as a kid.
Did we go to school together, Ed?
No,
I don't think so. Did you go to Seven Oaks School?
Yeah, for 1 year, for grade 4 there. Before first 3 years I was at Fluxton School, you know. we
Yes,
moved into
yes, 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 yes.
Okay, so maybe we can start. We have no one online so far. Oh,
Eddie's way too old to be in the same school as you.
I don't know if I'm 73,
I'm older than you.
okay, so let's start
Actually,
studying
I'm only 21.
about the mitzvot. Okay? You wanna read first?
From here?
Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi.
Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, aka Rabbi.
Oh, here.
Oh, so sorry. Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said, which is the straight path that a person should choose for himself? Whichever path that is itself praiseworthy for the person adopting it, and praiseworthy to him from other people, and to be as careful with a light commandment as with a weighty one, for you do not know the reward given for the fulfillment of the respective commandments. Also, weigh the loss that you may have sustained through the fulfillment of the commandment, against the reward that you may that may be obtained for fulfilling it, and weigh the gain that may be obtained through the committing of the transgression against the loss that may be sustained by committing it. Keep your eye on 3 things, that you will not come into sin. Know what is above you, an eye that sees, and the ear that hears, and all your deeds are written in a book.
Okay?
That's complex.
Yeah, we are going to read it. We're going to study those things. But the first thing you have to know about this, I would say the most important thing, even before we talk about the content, is who wrote this.
Hanassi.
Was Rabbi Yehuda, also called as Rabbi. This is one of the most important rabbis. Sometimes we talk about Hillel, Shammai, we talk about Rabbi Akiva, but this guy, he's the guy who put together the Mishnah. He didn't write the Mishnah, but he was the editor. And if you know anything about
Yes.
editors, they can do and undo as they please.
Ultimate power.
Ultimate power, because you don't know what else was around except through the lenses of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. He's the one who said, this stays, this goes. In fact, you're going to see in the Talmud, remember the Talmud comes after him. He closed the Mishnah, and then the rabbis got together and they discussed the Mishnah, and that became the Gemara. In the Gemara, we have Mishnah-like statements called Baraitas. And I don't know if the Baraitas were things that maybe Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi didn't incorporate in the Mishnah. Who knows? But then they made it into the Talmud through the Gemara, through the discussion, but they didn't come as oral law through the Mishnah. Many times they said, the Mishnah said that, and then the rabbi said yes. But didn't we learn from the Baraita that said something else?
Do we think of Baraita as footnotes?
No, Baraita is
Is an
it's a
opinion
statement. It's
in
not
and
an
of itself?
opinion. It's not an
Oh,
opinion.
it's a statement.
It's a statement of oral law. For example, I could say, I don't know, says the Baraita, you have to sing happy birthday every time somebody is celebrating a birthday.
And there's the Baraitas as authoritative as the Mishnah?
Yeah, they made it to the Talmud, and sometimes that's the proof they bring. That means that it's the same. Okay, so let's read who was Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi. Eddie, please.
Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, 135 to 217 CE, aka Rabbi, the title, which means my master and teacher, is the name bestowed by the Jewish people on Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi
Rabbi.
Hanassi, the prince, who is also known as Rabbeinu HaKadosh, our holy teacher and master. The rabbis ascribed this latter title to him because of his great modesty and probity in all human and godly affairs. They used the euphemism that he never placed his hand below his waist to describe his holy conduct. As a
I don't even
prince,
want to go there.
Well,
he was close.
I'm not talking.
He was
literally.
also close. he was
But
al-
it's, hold on, Eddie. When it says here that he, say again how it says.
He never placed his hand below his waist.
Okay, this is what you will see if you go to Chabad. When they daven, have you seen what Chabad? Did you see what Chabadniks do?
What?
What do they do when they daven?
He shokel.
What?
Shokel.
What is that?
The,
Nope.
Some of them do.
Nope. What do they do? They tie what? They tie a
A kittle?
no, like a belt.
The sash.
Yeah, it's a belt that they tie it at the waist, and they don't lower their hands below that point.
Why?
It's the way it is. Yep. You didn't know that.
No.
You never pay attention.
No. Not something you can see from the balcony.
They tie it. It's a rope. It's a rope. It's like a black rope. They turn around and they have.
She's white, she can't see that.
Not something you see from the balcony.
Or behind the curtain.
Because it goes over the body. It's not that something that they put it inside the suit. It goes outside.
Over top of the coat?
Over the coat, yes.
I don't remember seeing it.
Yep.
Or maybe I got so used to seeing it that I didn't see it after all. You know, you see something all the time, you don't even remember that you saw it. That,
does the Chabad center have a balcony, or do you just have
No.
a mechitza?
not now, not now, but in the old days.
What do you know?
Not a hell of a lot, obviously.
Okay.
Well, I find this very interesting. Okay.
The image froze on my computer. I hope people can still hear it. Okay, keep reading.
What is it? Rabbi Hanassi, the prince, was also known as Rabbeinu HaKadosh, our holy teacher and master. The rabbis ascribed this latter title to him because of his great modesty and probity in all human and godly affairs. They used the euphemism that he never placed his hand below his waist to describe his holy conduct. As a prince, he was also the temporal leader of the nation and was a close personal friend of his great admirer, the Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. What singles out Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi for particular honor and note in Jewish history is that he recognized the need to assemble and redact the teachings and rulings of the oral law in order that they not be forgotten. Due to the ravages of persecution and exile, he had the courage to implement his decision to publish a corpus of the laws, which is known as a Mishnah. The core of the Mishnah is a collection of wisdom and Torah law details of the oral teaching, Torah Shebe'al Peh, given to Moses on Sinai. The rule of keeping the oral law oral prevailed without exception during the time of the first temple. The second temple was completed in 349 BCE, 3412, but the difficulties in maintaining such a rule intensified because of the constant political turmoil, wars, and violence that marked that most difficult period. Many of the rabbis began to keep private notes of the oral law and the decisions regarding its interpretation and application to new situations. These became notebooks, beginning with one called Mishnah Rishonah, first Mishnah, dating back to the times of the Sugos, 3rd century BCE until those of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir of the 2nd century CE, 2 generations preceding Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi.
Okay. There's a little bit more about him in the next page. Finally,
Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi edited, reformulated, expanded, and organized those notebooks and the remaining oral teachings to produce a work called the Mishnah in the form we have it today. He accomplished his massive task toward the end of the 2nd century CE. The Babylonian Talmud, the massive discussion of and commentary to the Mishnah, was completed in the 5th and 6th century CE. The Talmud remains the basis for all Torah scholarship to this day.
okay,
Wow.
Is the term prince really the correct translation of Nasi? Wouldn't president or president of the Sanhedrin or even patriarch be better? I mean, the president of Israel is called Nasi in Hebrew, isn't he? So,
yeah.
but what's the term for a prince in the sense of not the head of state, but the son of the king? Would that be Nasi also? Like,
Prince. No, it's
Sar,
a different.
Sar would be.
It's a different name, but I can't remember. No, in Hebrew it's different. It's a different name.
so Nasi basically meant headman, chief, president, patriarch, whatever.
Yes.
It would be easier if I go there.
Nasi is the one in charge.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, and then they have 2 chairs together. Very kind.
How are you?
Okay. Okay, this is
Don't know, we're gonna sit here,
Okay.
playing musical.
okay.
It's
Hopefully
been about a long time since I've been young, though. That's just it.
hopefully the stream is going to hold now. We lost the stream.
Hi.
Okay. So let's start reading now. It's commenting the Mishnah that he actually wrote, Avot chapter 2 verse 1, about the Mitzvot, text 2. Doc.
Before saying or doing anything, a person should ask himself, what benefit will I have spiritually or physically from the words I am about to speak or the action I wish to perform? Using such an approach, one is far less prone to be guilty of foolish or forbidden words or behavior. Rabbi's advice is reminiscent of the biblical injunction, and you shall be vindicated from Hashem and from Israel. One of my teachers paraphrased the matter thusly: behave in a manner in which both your grandparents and children will be proud of you. Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen Kagan, Chafetz Chaim.
Okay. So it's interesting because here it's talking about the mitzvot as having a benefit to us, not much to God. And this is something that we all have to remember whenever we practice mitzvot. We don't do it for the sake of God, we do it for the sake of ourselves. Why? Because, well, God doesn't really need mitzvot.
Do we do it for ourselves or we do it for others?
Well, for ourselves. Whenever, mainly for ourselves. Even when you do something for others, there is an effect on you.
But isn't there somewhere in Pirkei what it says that you do things not for your own self-benefit or for expecting a reward or some kind of benefit, but you do it for not just the sake of doing it, but because you are doing it for Hashem or you're doing it for somebody else,
No, but
not for yourself.
He said not expecting a reward.
Yeah.
That's still not expecting a benefit from it.
Yeah.
They are two different things. It's not that you do something because you expect that by doing it you're going to go to heaven.
But you do it, and therefore you benefit
Now.
from doing it,
And sometimes the benefit is,
because it makes you feel good,
sometimes we don't know the benefit. Sometimes we can't measure it. How can you measure
because
the
you
benefit?
just feel it's the right thing to do.
Sometimes the benefit is spiritually and it cannot be measured. How can you measure the benefit of, I always say the same thing, the circumcision? People try to explain that it has some benefit physically. I don't buy it. Because you read one paper, read another paper, and then you realize that we are mixing apples and oranges here. Because it's the intention from the Torah when you read it is clear that it's something that cannot be measured. And it can't be measured, the benefit. It's a
Well,
spiritual benefit in a way that we don't understand.
Okay.
But I thought you were saying that there are some, as you were saying, there are some scientific, well, I don't know for reasons, but benefits. Like, for example, the 8th day, there are certain benefits to the coagulation of blood. Were you saying this?
I doubt they knew that.
And
And it's not clear.
it turns out now that I've read that there's less risk of transmitting the HIV virus.
Oh, that's proven,
if the
it's
kids
not,
be-
it's very definite. Alan Ronald just did that when we were in Kenya in the late 90s. It was already well known that circumcised men did not transmit HIV to the extent that the uncircumcised population did. And so there was a huge raft for the next 20 years of adult males volunteering to be circumcised.
You know what I think is interesting here? It's the thing is behave in a manner in which both your grandparents and grandchildren will be proud of you. So it's actually interesting because it's almost suggesting that grandparents and grandchildren are proud of you for different reasons. That, you know, otherwise it would just said, or your grandchildren, or your grandparents, or your parents. So that's something different. And the other reason why I think it's interesting is that oftentimes, you know, we sort of work on a fee-for-service basis, and there are ways of manipulating the fee schedule. And when we talk about it, I always say that, you know, the right fee is the one that if they had an interview you in the free press, that you wouldn't be embarrassed about.
To be on the
because-
front page.
Yeah, to be on the front page of the free press with. That's sort of, you know, what they're saying here too.
They're saying something else too. Both your grandparents, what you're saying is, would your grandparents, who were not your antecedents, but pre-antecedents, would have been proud of you? In other words, you wouldn't have brought embarrassment or shame to them or to their name, or
Yeah.
to your name, so that your grandchildren would be proud. We're going backwards and forwards.
The thing is, you read at the end what it says. It says here, hold on. Keep an eye on 3 things, and you will not commit a sin. Know that what is above you.
Yeah.
An eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your deeds are written in a book.
Yep.
But it's almost like you have to imagine when you go through life that somebody's watching. How will you behave if you know that somebody's watching?
Yeah. But don't you ever think, what would you say to think of what you were doing right now?
But it's important to what I think. But you know what, it reminds me, Fiddler on the Roof, you know, he didn't do anything without God watching him.
Well, that's right.
You know, Tevye always had God watching him.
Cassie here, she can't connect.
There's a storm outside, like a little storm.
Oh,
I know
he's
you
fully-
country folks, but
It's a breeze.
It's a try.
It's nothing.
Huh. The image froze again. Let me answer.
Because maybe it's the spot here. We block the
Is this,
sign.
or is that a smoke
But he's
detector?
connected directly to. No, that's
No, that's a Wi-Fi thingy.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we are
Wi-Fi.
below the antenna. I think the app is broken because,
It's working now.
yeah, I can see it here, but if you go to my phone, it's like a frozen image. See, look.
Oh, it's moving now.
Oh,
Just
Is it coming up with a 3-second delay, just like we
No,
do
this is-
upstairs in the chapel?
it's super fast here, and maybe that's that's the problem. I should have added the delay. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, let's continue. Next text. Who's next? Shall we?
Okay. There are mitzvot that appear to be simple and easy, that do not require great mental concentration, physical effort, or monetary sacrifice. There are mitzvot that are downright enjoyable, such as eating the Shabbos meal or drinking wine on the holidays. While other mitzvot, such as giving charity, studying Torah, and fasting on Yom Kippur, certainly require physical and mental sacrifice, if not even anguish. Yet we have no right to differentiate between one mitzvah and another. The rule of the rabbis is, if a mitzvah presents itself before you, do it immediately without delay.
What is this coming from? What is the biblical source for that rabbinic statement? Abraham. When God said
yes.
to Abraham,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
sacrifice your son. Next we know, next verse, it said, early in the morning, he left. Early in the morning. Why? Rabbis understand, he didn't delay it.
Yes.
He did it right away.
I don't agree with you.
It's written.
I know. But it's not a mitzvah, it was an order.
That's what mitzvah is.
Now,
mitzvah
he
is an
agrees.
order.
When you give, you're an officer, a general, you give an order to a soldier, it's not a mitzvah.
It's a mitzvah.
It's an
the same,
obligation. But
it's the
An
same root. In
obligation.
Hebrew,
When-
it's the same word.
when Abraham was just circumcised and the three angels appear, they run to them.
Yeah.
He don't delay. Don't oh I don't feel good tomorrow or no. He do it himself.
Yeah, okay. The difference is in that case there was no commandment. God didn't say go receive them. This is the one that God said do this, and Abraham immediately after he woke up really early to do it. Yeah, but I understand your text, your source. This is it's more like an interpretation.
Yeah.
But he ran to fulfill the mitzvah of receiving guests, of
Yes.
hospitality. But it's not explicitly given by God, that commandment. But by the way, an order is a mitzvah. It's the same word in Hebrew. That's what it is. People sometimes confuse the word mitzvah and you see like
As an
somebody's-
act of charity or
Somebody
something.
is entered to the door and you open the door for the person. Oh, such a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah. It's an act of chesed. It's a good deed, but it's not a mitzvah. A mitzvah is a commandment.
But is there a commandment to, there's no commandment to do a mitzvah immediately. There is a,
It's a rabbinical.
and the mitzvah to do, for hospitality, there's no commandment for that either, is there? That's also rabbinical, from,
We're not sure if there is something that it was interpreted from that directly from the Torah. Not sure about that. Yeah. But we learned that the first opportunity to do it from Abraham, and he did that. I'm not saying that we do that with every single mitzvah that we have. For example, the mitzvah of prayer, you don't have to do it. You know, you don't have to wake up early in the morning as soon as this
The sun comes up.
the sun comes up, so you can do it. No, you don't have to do that.
But there are negative mitzvot as well, aren't there?
Yeah, but
Kill.
negative means you shall not. Positive means you shall. But what the rabbis are saying is, if you don't do a mitzvah the first opportunity to have to do it, you may not do it at all.
So, going back to the general scenario, but also to the thou shalt or thou shalt not, that's the command, but the action is the mitzvah, the doing, or the not doing. That's the mitzvah, is it not?
What do you mean?
Going back to the order of the general, where you're saying, that's a mitzvah. It's not that the commandment is the mitzvah, it is the obeying of the
No,
commandment.
the commandment is the mitzvah.
So what is the obeying of the follow through?
Fulfilling of a mitzvah. Fulfillment of a mitzvah. Mitzvah,
So,
tzivui is order.
so there's always, can you say that there's always two parts to a mitzvah?
Only if it's done.
Yeah, is the command
And the action,
and the obedience.
and the obedience.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it should be. Should be like that. Okay, let's keep reading. Immediately, without delay.
True, elsewhere, the Mishnah and the Talmud offer a scale of priority regarding the performance of mitzvot and their inherent rewards. There are certain mitzvot for whose performance the Torah itself mentions long life as a reward. And there are mitzvot for whose performance the Talmud promises partial reward in this world and complete reward in the world to come. Yet none of this contradicts the words of Rabbi. His intent is to caution against saving oneself for later, perhaps grander mitzvot. He is telling us, don't save yourself for the great things. They may never arrive for you. Do not judge mitzvot in terms of lightness and severity, of their potential rewards and benefits. Many times in life, it is the small thing that makes the great difference. The almost offhand smile and kind word to a stranger or a child, the small coins easily given to the poor, the care and devotion involved in kindling the Shabbos lights have changed the life of many a beneficiary and performer of these acts. They intimately, a mitzvah in hand is worth far more than a potential greater mitzvah that yeshivas, that people often promise to build the roof when one is asking them for help to lay the foundation. One can never know if the foundation is perhaps more important than the roof. Or one is sometimes told, try me when you have something really special that needs money. It is difficult for finite humans to judge what is really special in the eyes of the infinite Lord.
We have situations like this with donors,
Oh, no kidding.
right?
Yeah.
When you do something big, count with me for that. But then I won't give you $1,000 to sponsor a Shabbat dinner now.
Don't bother me with the little
Well,
things.
now you're
Come
gonna
back
have
to
an
me with something.
opportunity to go to them.
Maybe. Yeah, absolutely.
But realistically, most people can't afford to give donations, either in money or in time, to every legitimate cause, so sometimes they have to prioritize.
Yeah.
I mean, some things are clearly more important than others.
Well, with money, you can do, the rabbi said you can do with your money whatever you want. And you can give your money to whoever you want. Okay? That's halakha. That's the way it works.
Or not.
No, you have to, because there is a percentage you have to give.
That's true.
But to who you give it? Do you want to give it to family? They need,
Oh,
or
I
you
see
want to
what you're
give it to
saying.
the poor children in Africa? It's up to you.
I see what you're saying.
Nobody can tell you where to direct your money. They are suggestions, but thank God for people who don't follow the suggestions. Otherwise, nobody will ever give money to the poor people in Africa. Because the rabbis will say priority number one are family members. Priority number two, community.
Yeah.
Number three, your city. Number four, your province, your country, etc. Keep expanding. But if you don't have, if everybody will follow that guideline, nobody will give money to
To where it's needed the most.
To where it might be needed the most.
or to an animal shelter? Nobody, because somebody will say, why will you give money to an animal shelter when they
When
are
you wouldn't feel a
poor
starving
people?
person on the street, yeah.
Because it's my money, and I can do with my money whatever I want, and that's the short answer.
I think, you know, the last sentence is really what the most important thing is because it's, I mean, who are we to measure the value of a mitzvah? It's God is the only one, and we don't know the answer to that. So what we may think is the most important mitzvah, keeping kosher, keeping Shabbat, you know, maybe God thinks the only important mitzvah is honoring your father and your mother. We don't know that. So, not that I keep any number of mitzvot, I don't, but we're
that's between
obliged,
you and Hashem.
we're obliged to keep them all,
Yeah, it's
because we don't know what's the
the
important.
rabbi is still a parable about this king who asked everybody to plant flowers in the yards of the kingdom, but the king didn't tell anybody what was his favorite flower. So everybody started to plant their own favorite flower, hoping that would be the king's favorite. But it happened that the king did have a favorite flower, but he didn't want to tell anybody because now he's enjoying the whole garden with all the different colors. Otherwise, would never have happened, because as he said to everybody, I prefer roses, it will be full of
There would be
roses, and then
nothing
it's
else
not
but.
pretty anymore. The fact that it's your
Yeah.
favorite doesn't mean that you don't want anything else around.
It's true.
We need all the variety.
True.
Sometimes you can tell which mitzvahs, especially negative mitzvahs, are more serious than others by the penalty applied. I mean, some in the Bible itself
Yeah.
referred to the death penalty or
Well, but that's what it says here.
compensation or
That's what it says here. That's what the rabbi is saying, right? That some mitzvahs, they do have a guideline for reward and punishment, and it make it look like it's, yeah.
So if the mitzvah says that if your son is disobedient to you, taking him out to the square and stone him, now how do you carry that out?
Yeah, you have to take it to the judges and to say that son doesn't listen to me, and then it will be stoned there, right?
Yeah, but do you carry it out even like today in Canada? Would you even carry that out? Or would
No,
you?
I don't think the rabbis, those things they would never carry that.
by what I understand, it was interpreted so strictly that like you say, it couldn't be carried out. They had to put so many rules and you know, as I said, sometimes a law can be rendered almost unusable by all the.
Codes.
I mean, realistically, Judaism, even though all the laws in the Bible that call for capital punishment, most rabbis oppose capital punishment because the Talmud put so many rules. You know, there had to be 2 or 3 eyewitnesses. Nowadays, and you couldn't, oh yes, and you couldn't confess to a capital crime. The confession would be held against you. Nowadays, if that was still the law, we couldn't have capital punishment anymore, you know, because.
We don't.
We don't.
Well, in any part of the world, unfortunately, the state still does. But, so.
Well, a few other places.
I have a question about Isaac and Abraham. Was Isaac his son? Because can't help but think if somebody was asked to stack for, he wasn't asked, but he lost his son in a war, and it felt that whatever benefit he got from that loss was a gain for him. Because he felt that son wasn't his son.
Okay.
Was that the same thing with Abraham sacrificing Isaac? Or could he have?
Well, but it didn't actually happen.
No, but willing to.
There are lots of things.
He didn't hesitate.
He didn't hesitate The rabbis tried to explain it because he knew that wasn't going to happen. He knew that it wasn't going to happen.
But it reads as though he was proceeding to the moment below, just before the moment.
Yeah, but then something happened and it didn't happen.
But so the rabbis say he suspected that
Yeah.
that's the way it was gonna be?
Yeah, that he knew that it was a test.
He took out his knife.
Yeah, but he knew there was a test.
Yeah, because he said that when Isaac asked him, where's the sheep, or Abraham said, God will provide the sheep. So, you know,
Yeah,
we, as I mentioned before, several years ago, we had a very interesting discussion at the Rabbi Neil and Carol Rose Alternative Minyan on the High Holidays. We once had a discussion. Did Abraham really pass the test by volunteering to sacrifice his son upon God's command? We had an interesting discussion of the ethics and morality of the thing.
because you can't believe that the same one that said to God, how are you going to punish Sodom and Gomorrah, will go and sacrifice his son, right? Without saying the same argument. Are
That's
you
right.
calling yourself the judge?
Yep.
What kind of God are you? Abraham did say that about Sodom, but he didn't do it when he said, go sacrifice your son. Because he knew it. He knew that it was it was a test. It's like almost like if God said to Abraham, "Go to the cliff and jump," we'll be sure that God is going to be stop him from crashing to the bottom.
But when we're at the point early on, when Hashem commands Avram to circumcise Yitzchak, that's early in their relationship. But later on, when we get to the Sodom scenario, they've already got a relationship. And Abraham knows by that point that he can challenge Hashem. He can say to him, what the hell do you think you're doing? Why are you doing this? Whereas the first part of their relationship, it wouldn't have occurred to him that he could do that.
But wasn't Sodom before Yitzchak, though? Yes, Sodom, because the angel said.
Oh, yeah, that's right, it is.
Yeah.
I've got it asked backwards.
Yeah. He had a relationship.
His test of
Well, there
faith
goes my
was the
argument.
fact that
Yeah.
And it was such
he
a
may
good
have
one.
believed that God's going to provide the ram, and at the last minute he looked and the ram was there.
Yeah. But I think the fact that Sodom was first, he also learned a lesson there. Because Abraham asked God, how can you do that? What if there are
And
50
God-
righteous people? What if there are 40? What if there are 30?
What if there's,
Were there
what if there's?
50? Could you find 50 people there? 50 righteous people?
Apparently not.
40? 30? 20? So was God right?
It was only the family of Lot.
But what was God right to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? So perhaps
So
Abraham
that's a
learned a
question.
lesson not to doubt God. Because Abraham said, how can you do that? What if there are 50 people? God said, you see, Abraham, they are not 50 people. That's what I'm doing it. What there are 40 people, Abraham, they are not 40 people. That's what I'm doing it.
Basically, it's also saying God is always right,
Yeah.
even if you don't think so.
I mean, it means that you can challenge God, but that the stories that we have from the Bible that people challenging God ended up proving that God was right.
So by challenging him, you gave God the opportunity to bring it to their knowledge that he was right. You know, I mean, had they not challenged it, had they forever had the doubts in their mind.
And the next time that God said something to Abraham, like take your son,
He didn't ask questions anymore.
he
He
didn't
just
ask it this time, and he went. But once again, God was right, and because what Abraham knew how could God promise a nation if he's going to kill my son? Abraham pre-Sodom will say, are you calling yourself a just God? If you just promised me that I'm going to be the father of many nations and you're going to kill my son, now he knows better. God wouldn't never promise him that to go and kill his son. Then it didn't happen. So in other words, the teaching, the lesson for us is to have the same attitude of Abraham. He said, God didn't bring me this far to leave me alone now.
Right.
That's the message for us. God didn't bring you all this far and open all these doors for you and give you all these amazing tools to leave you alone. You have to have faith that eventually the ram will be there.
I mean, that's the
Yes.
only thing that makes sense, because the story itself
Faith.
doesn't make sense. Isaac was, 40 years old then, and he's not going to lie down on a thing to be
Okay.
sacrificed.
Well,
And-
and for
and-
there are two different midrashim. One that said that yes, he did, that he was obedient.
uh-huh.
And because in Kabbalah, Abraham represents obedience.
Abraham,
Sorry,
or
Isaac.
Isaac.
Isaac represents obedience. Isaac represents law. This is what it is, this is what is done. If God and my father said that I should be lying down there and wait for the knife, that's what I do. That's Isaac. Isaac is the one who has limits. I don't want to get too much into Kabbalah, but Isaac is the one that never left his land, because he's the one that represents boundaries and borders and rules.
Obedience?
Obedience. Has many different names in Hebrew. Represent din, judgment.
The din, yeah.
And in the Kabbalah, if you see the tree of life, it represents if you are looking at the picture, is the left side.
Yes.
The
but
right side is Abraham, that is all the opposite. Abraham is expansion. Expansion with no limit. Is the giver. The one who goes everywhere. The one who expands. And then the balance is the middle, represented by Jacob, which is the number 3.
Yes.
Which, by the way,
Yes.
in Kabbalah, the number 3 is always double. And it's not a coincidence that Jacob was twin.
3 is double.
The 3 implies the 4. It's contained with the 4. I don't want to.
Yeah, that's
It's
too confusing.
That's a lot of fun.
But I think what we have to be careful is not to think the story of Abraham, Isaac is to take it literally, and unless you're a literalist, then we are literalists. I think we'd be very fearful for our lives at all times, because we you can't take part of the Bible literally and then ignore other parts of it.
No,
So-
basically, the thing is, the facts are irrelevant. What
Right.
is important is the morale here.
Exactly.
What is telling you, look, God is right. The story could be a different story, but what you get from there is what I mentioned before. God didn't bring you this far to leave you alone. God already gave you a promise. God would not change his mind.
No, God doesn't. We don't know of any instances where God has said, oops.
Well, basically, we do have instances with God said to Moses, move to the side, they're going to destroy them.
Oh, yes,
And
in
then
that
Moses
case,
says,
yes.
You can't do it because then the Egyptians are
They'll
going
make
to
fun
laugh
of
at
you,
you,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And God said, you're right. That's kind of awkward. That attitude is more awkward. That Moses but in other words, what the rabbis learn from there is our ability to remind God of the promises. So sometimes
Thinking,
when we pray,
isn't
we
that like-
remind God the promises we received. That's why we open our prayer saying, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. In other words, what we are saying is, remember them, remember the promises. They say that you're going to bless their descendants, coming to collect. I'm a descendant.
So this basically is,
So you're,
hey, in case you forgot, I'm reminding you.
here I am.
Hina needs.
Yeah, yeah. Next, text 5.
You guys are on it.
Oh,
Text 5.
okay. The Mishnah speaks of a proper path rather than of a righteous path, which would imply the mitzvot between man and God. Rabbi's stress is on the interpersonal areas that are included in the term the proper path. The path of God is that which Abraham would teach his descendants, Genesis 18:19, which entails imitating God's attributes of mercy, compassion, and holiness.
Aha, this is something totally different. The Rambam is bringing a completely different interpretation. Back to page number 1. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, which is the straight or proper path that a person should choose for himself? Okay? Well, according to the Rambam, Rabbi is not asking for all the mitzvot. Rabbi is asking only for the mitzvot that they are ben adam lechavero, from one person to another. And it's not even touching the topic of the mitzvot between us and God. Okay? So by Rabbi, by opening his statement with these kind of questions, he's limiting the realm of the mitzvot that he's going to discuss in the Mishnah. Just the mitzvot from one person to another.
What is it?
Oh, sorry, you can't read? You need new glasses?
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
That's the tomb of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. You know that I like to put the photo of it.
Yes.
If the burial place is known to us, I like to put it there. So if you ever go to Israel, you can go to visit.
Been there.
I said, hi, Rabbi Mas says hi.
No, I didn't get a chance to do that.
And-
But I could,
and hope
next
that-
time I go back, I'll,
hope that
next,
someone doesn't
next time
answer
I
you.
go back. You know,
What does it say there? Let's see if I can read it.
I visited more tombs and more
It
graves
says,
when I was
Cave
there. I
of the
tell you.
Coffins at Beit She'arim National Park. The traditional
Burial place.
burial place of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi.
Hanasi.
He had a tradition of getting buried there.
Well,
Yeah. And there are many rabbis buried there. It's a complex of caves.
And they continue to argue together.
What do
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah, they studied.
There are a lot of rabbis there.
Yeah, they study
Study.
together. It's like
Study
people who
together.
wants to get buried in the Shaare Zedek Cemetery close to Main Street, so they can see the shows from Rainbow Stage in the summer, right?
but we will mention it anyway.
Okay. So what is Genesis 18:19? Look, if you can read the top of page 3. I put for your convenience the verse that was quoted by the Rambam.
For I have made myself known to him, so that he will give orders to his children and to his household after him to keep the way of Adonai, and to do what is right and just, so that Adonai may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him.
Okay? So in other words, what God said is, I want you to teach your descendants what is right and just. Not talking about any kind of rituals. Okay, next.
Should I continue? or-
It's Melna.
Oh,
But I had
You had the wrong paper.
got the wrong page,
This is the kosher one.
so, okay, oh,
right here. Right
Page
here.
3.
Page 3 at the bottom.
sorry.
That one.
Text number 10.
I'm looking.
6.
Six.
Number 6.
Number 6.
People should maintain their own individuality while defining their way of serving God. Merely to imitate others is a grave error. God invests every individual with a unique set of abilities, talents, and faults, and it is with these that He wants a person to serve Him. Rabbi could have said simply, the proper path is to adhere to the Torah and all its mitzvot. This is true, but would be insufficient. I'm having trouble with my class. Rabbi means to teach that we must bring the uniqueness of our personalities to bear on our godly service. One must choose a path that is a credit to his own blend of traits and talents. Thus, at the same time that we are achieving uniqueness in the service of God, we are reminded to respect the paths of others. The Midrash states, just one person's facial features differ from those of another person, so do people's ideas differ.
Okay,
Midrash.
very interesting.
I'd like to just comment on what I
Yes.
saw last night. It was about Sammy Davis Jr. And that's exactly, didn't know, being a Jew and black was quite an achievement. And he performed, he said, because this is what God, these are the talents God gave him, and it's up to him to use them.
Yeah,
And that's exactly the way he described his life.
but the
Yes.
problem is most people don't know their talents.
That's true.
That's very true, actually.
And it's not just the talents. You should be aware of your talents
And
Right.
your ability.
Limitations.
and your limitations. It's very important,
Good point.
right? Because if you realize right away that you could be a great singer, but you're a terrible dancer, it would be a crime, to neglect your singing and to dedicate your life to try to be a dancer. It's kind of obvious to me, but I will tell you the story, and I will repeat this because he always tells it. It's remember Cantor Finkelstein,
Yes.
Mayor Finkelstein, the one who wrote Le Dorvador, Le Dorvador. He was in Winnipeg for my installation 16 years ago. Very interesting character, Mayor Finkelstein. When he came here, he was 52. He was the cantor Bet Sedek in Toronto. But when I first knew about him, he was a cantor at Temple Sinai in Beverly Hills, in Los Angeles. What happened? Why did he move from Beverly Hills to Toronto? Well, it happened that he didn't really move from Beverly Hills to Toronto. He was tired of being a cantor and a composer. And he tried to open a business, schmata business.
Huh.
Guess what happened?
It went broke.
Of course. And he's not a stupid man. He went broke, so he had to go back
And start all over again as a chazan.
as a chazan.
But he left Toronto right after that.
But then he tried again, another business, and he also failed.
Uh-huh.
And he had to go back, and he went to
Dallas, I think.
No, now he's there. But before that, he went Detroit,
That's right.
and then, I would like to, I would like to have him in front of me and say, "Can't you see that God is sending you a message? You were not sent to this world to be in the schmata business, to sell clothing."
When I was out in Birmingham, in Alabama, when I did my fellowship, the rabbi, conservative rabbi in our synagogue, went to law school while he was a rabbi, and then became a very prominent commercial lawyer. He gave up the rabbinate to become a very prominent commercial lawyer. So
Sometimes it's the opposite.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, of
He
course.
did. He used all his what do you call it? He knew everybody in the community, and his connections. So if you
And don't forget
You
an-
want to be a lawyer?
the analytical ability one gains from studying all the civil and criminal law that's in the Talmud, even if it's no longer in force, would obviously help a person if he or she wants to do secular law as well. There are a number of people that have both. One of the guys that I graduated with from law school in 1972, now he's retired, Justice Joe Mullally. Before he went into law school, he was Father Joe, a Catholic priest.
Yes,
And-
that's right, I remember that.
And remember, of course,
Yep.
Alan Cantor's son, David
Yeah,
Cantor.
yeah.
He
Yeah.
got his law degree before he
Yeah.
went to the rabbinate, so
Yeah.
it's not unusual at all.
And Rabbi Nessus, he was a lawyer first, I think, and then he was a rabbi.
Oh, was
I
he a
think
lawyer
yeah.
first?
He went, I
Oh.
think so, and then he went back to law again.
Yeah, sometimes happens, but it could be either way. But or Cantor sold him.
Who?
Sold him.
Yeah.
Le Dorvado, when he came here, he told his story. He said he knew that he was a singer. And he was a cousin, and then he also wanted to be an opera singer. But one day he had a conversation with himself, and he decided not to pursue an opera, a career in opera, and to dedicate
Himself as a cousin.
all his energy just as a cousin. But then I remember he said it here, and then he said a phrase in Yiddish. Can't remember the words, but then it translated something is, "You can't make a buck with these Italians."
Haven't there been some cantors that also were opera singers?
Yes.
They were, but
There was one here once.
They were two brothers, actually.
they
My mind's gone blank.
really famous. I would say there were two. They were John Pierce
Yes,
Oh, yeah, right.
Jan Pierce and his brother,
and the brother-in-law,
and his brother-in-law, that's
Tucker,
right.
and
Yeah,
Richard Tucker.
Richard Tucker, yeah.
There were some in Europe, but I think Gershon Sirota, I think he was also an opera singer in Poland. But usually
But the opera singer, Pierce Tucker, whenever he sang, you could get glimpse of Chazonisha coming
with,
through.
More with Pierce than
Yeah, that's
Tucker.
right, yeah,
Pierce was more
You
a
could hear-
cousin
you could hear it.
than an opera singer. But they were both trained with the same technique.
Yeah.
That was interesting. But then you had others that they tried and they didn't succeed in opera, like Kusevitsky. The voice was too harsh for opera. They worked on Chazonish, the crying and thing, but for opera,
Doesn't
you
work.
like vibrato sometimes, it's a different thing. But it's very important. I would say it's very important to know why you're here and why you're not here.
Okay.
It's
You know, I really want to be a carpenter. I don't want to be a surgeon. I actually know someone who was a surgeon who became a carpenter.
The law of surgeons
Yeah.
and carpenters are called orthopods.
Well, that's another story. No, but this guy really did become a finishing carpenter.
Did the College of Physicians and Surgeons have anything to do with that?
No.
Do you like to sing opera?
no,
You don't like opera?
no, I don't have memory.
He likes to listen to opera.
I don't have to be an opera singer. You have to have a phenomenal memory. I guess in these days it's easier. I read that they have like teleprompters now.
They do.
They have a screen that they can read the words. In the past, they used to have this guy.
The guy in the
booth.
hole. Yeah.
Sometimes they are old recordings that you can actually hear them. There is this very famous tenor, Franco Corelli. Amazing
I love
voice.
Corelli.
He was Italian. Every time he was singing in French, they are live recordings. You can hear the guy yelling the words because he couldn't remember a single word of the aria in French. It's embarrassing. I don't know. For me, to listen to the recording is kind of embarrassing.
It's true.
If I would read number 7, having read it, I'll comment in a minute. Just as I cannot be upset with another person for having a nose that is different from mine, so I must respect one whose opinions are different. That last part of that sentence, I'm reminded of a quotation that's on the Peace Chapel at the International Peace Gardens, we did all the inscriptions inside, and there was 10,000 letters. And one of the inscriptions, that the international, that chapel has quotations, supposedly 10,000 letters. We're out, have to be out there. And I can't, for the life of me, I can't remember who it was. But further to be peace in the world, and that's the words he used to describe how it would come about, that when you can have respect for people who have opinions that are different than yours. And it's so, just like it was written there so many years ago, now it's on a piece
It's engraved on a tablet of stone.
He did all that lettering himself early in the morning.
Okay, so let's do the next one.
Number 8.
I got to ask a question before we go further. In number 6, this is true, but would it be sufficient? Is that, I'm reminded of, when you, way back when you start studying philosophy academically, to present an argument, you have to have this thing. Is it necessary but not sufficient to make the argument? Is that what this is saying? This is true, but would be insufficient. When it's talking about the proper path is to adhere to the Torah and all its mitzvot. It's saying that in itself is true, but is it enough?
Okay, you have to understand the way rabbis think. If a rabbi starts by asking, what is the proper path? Right? Then another rabbi would argue, why in this world is asking that? Why would he have to ask a question instead of simply saying, fulfill all the mitzvot? That's it. So then, if the rabbis are using a different sentence, it means that he's trying to tell you something else. And that's what we are trying to discover now. Why Rabbi felt the need to ask the question, and instead of giving that clear answer, that's it, and let's move on. Which it did happen in other texts of Pirkei Avot.
Right. Okay.
Right? That the rabbi said, this is what you do. But not in this case. By asking that question, it means that there is no one answer. Because he could
leaves the door open for another interpretation.
If you argue that the rabbi opened with a question as a means to attract your attention, then he would have to say, what is the proper path to Torah and Mitzvot?
But that's not what's
That's not what it
happening
says
here. Okay.
8.
It is more important to be galat kosher in one's dealings with people than to be galat kosher in what one eats. The name Israel is a contraction.
Contraction.
Is a contraction of Yashar, upright, and El, God. The Jewish people strive only to do God's will as expressed in the letter of the law, but also to adopt a godly standard of uprightness and integrity. Rabbi Yosef
Brewer. I mean, first you have to understand that it's not a coincidence that the rabbis who's talking about glad kosher is Ashkenazi. Because glad kosher is a Sephardic thing.
Oh, is it? That kosher Sephardic, huh?
Yes. When meat is glad, it means that it follows the Sephardic more stringent tradition. Kashrut, kosher food, in general, is way more lenient in the Sephardic world, except for meat. Meat is the only place in Kashrut that Ashkenazi is more lenient.
Oh, what is there other than meat?
Cheese.
Oh, yeah, right.
For example, the Sephardic
If it has
ruling for
rennet.
cheese is way more lenient. There is a cheese that you can get in Walmart or Costco. I buy the fresh mozzarella at Costco. The hechsher, the symbol, is a tablet with a K
Yes.
side. It's known as tablet K.
Yeah.
Ashkenazi don't eat tablet K. It's Sephardic, and it's not approved. I was talking to Rabbi Benarosh. He said that he eats it, but he cannot allow it in the places he supervises because there is an understanding that he is supervising with the standards of the OU. That is Ashkenazi. So I think it's a brand that's called, one is Silani, and there are a couple more that now they're adopting tablet K.
So wait, what else is there other than cheese that is not meat that you have to worry about kashrut? Vegetables are all kosher. Well, I guess, what about the thing like lettuce with the little bugs in it that you're
You
not
can't.
supposed?
You can.
You can't.
The other thing that you
Is that is Sephardic or
no, that's the same for both.
for both?
But the things that
I
they are
wonder
more
what that does
lenient,
with kale.
Sephardic will allow you to use one dishwasher.
Oh yeah.
Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, he said that you can do meat and dairy in the same load. You know, if you have a dishwasher that reaches a certain temperature and whatever. Rabbi Benarosh would say to me, I don't know anybody who actually follows that, but Rabbi Ovadia Yosef says you can do it. But even if you want to be more stringent, in the Sephardic world, you have one dishwasher and you do 2 loads.
Yeah, that's why they have the magnets that go, one side says meat and the other side says dairy, so you know what's in the machine all the time.
But Ashkenazi and you're not allowed to use the same dishwasher.
At the same time, not separate shelves?
No, but Ashkenazi, you are not allowed to use the dishwasher, the same dishwasher.
You have to have 2 dishwashers.
2 dishwashers.
Sorry,
Some rabbis will allow you to use different rack.
that's why I'm asking.
You
I
can
know
actually
people
go
who
to
use
the
different
internet
rack.
and you buy a second rack, and you know the one has the wheels, and you can actually take one and put the other. You could use that. Yeah, but Sephardic is way more lenient.
So then that gets into the whole realm of the refrigerator as well.
And ovens and everything.
Yeah.
So we just say ribs out.
Yeah, but meat, Sephardic, and it's related. I'm not an expert on blood, but it's related to something about the lungs of the animal.
The lungs have to be inspected, that there has to be no blood
Yeah, but it's a
anywhere in
lesion.
the alveoli.
If there is a lesion, the Sephardic will allow you to remove that part, and then the animal is still kosher. No, sorry, the Ashkenazi will allow you to remove that part, and the animal is still kosher. Well, the Sephardic will say the animal is not kosher. You cannot remove it. Yes.
Our daughter from Toronto, when she comes, like if I've made something with milk in it, she has to clean the oven. I've got
Yeah.
self-cleaning before we cook meat in it.
But that's not.
What is that?
That's
It's not leaking,
No, but it's Ashkenazi,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
So I've got lots of oven racks as it, but that's not good enough, right?
Okay.
This bit about the lung, could there be any medical reasons behind those rulings?
I don't know. As I said, I'm not an expert.
But there were some traditions in the old country where they ate lungen, which is lung.
But if there was a lesion in that, wouldn't that be a sign that the thing was cancerous? I mean, you wouldn't want to.
TB probably.
I mean,
No idea.
Tuberculosis.
For animals?
No idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bovine tuberculosis used to be a
Yeah.
big thing here.
Yep.
Still is sometime. Well, I don't think it has been. There's a case, I think, if I remember right, about 7 or 8 years ago.
The bison had some.
Oh, yeah, that's right, that's right.
Okay.
That's
Next.
what they were worried about. They would
Mm.
spread to the cattle around there.
Text 9.
Oh, no?
Oh my
Rabbi
God.
Alan.
Consider 3 things, and you will not come into the grip of sin. Focus mentally and emotionally upon these 3 items so as not to lose sight of life's purpose. Most sin is not a result of evil intention, but rather of an unclear perspective.
Okay, this is another interpretation. Remember, the first one I said is live. You have to live like there is somebody watching you.
Yes.
The same way that you would not misbehave if you know that there are cameras or guards. So
Or your grandparents and parents.
yeah,
Same concept.
keep that perspective in life and you're fine.
What are the three items, or where, how come they didn't tell us?
It's in the first text. It's in
Oh, I
page,
see.
Page 1. What is it?
That's what happens when you come late.
There is an eye that sees, an
Uh-huh.
ear that hears, and all your deeds are written in a book.
Mhm.
Eddie, back to you.
Number 10.
Yes.
A businessman hired a wagon driver to transport him to another city, warning him to make sure that the horse did not stray from the path. Having just eaten a full meal, the businessman settled into the wagon and promptly dozed off. The wagon driver also fell asleep. The horse continued along the road until it spotted a grassy knoll, and it veered off to the side, overturning the wagon and waking up its passengers. The businessman berated the wagon driver for having fallen asleep and losing control over the horse. The wagon driver sought to justify himself. My horse is highly intelligent, and I felt confident I could rely on it not to go astray. Fool, he answered the businessman. Even if your horse is the wisest of all horses, it is still only a horse. The temptation of good feeding is too great a lure for even the smartest of horses. Similarly, man is a synthesis of the forces of the body and soul. As long as the soul keeps an intelligent watch over the body, ensuring that it will not stray from the Torah path, all is well. However, if one allows the soul to doze off, claiming that the body will stand watch, he is quite foolish, for the body, left on its own, will not be able to withstand temptation. Therefore, the Mishnah teaches, calculate the reward of a sin against its cost. Keep your focus trained on a long-range goal, and let these eternal needs govern temporal desires. The Chafetz Chaim.
Okay. Okay, that's clear. Next.
In earlier times, the nation received spiritual guidance from prophets who were blessed with a seeing eye, able to know and articulate God's expectations. Later, when prophecy ceased, we still had people who possessed a hearing ear, attuned to the heavenly voice called a bat kol, which gave them the spiritual guidance to lead the nation and to protect it from moral recklessness. Now even this is gone. Today one can only find his spiritual bearings in the words of Torah themselves, and all your actions are recorded in the book, meaning that the guidelines for behavior can now be found only in the Torah.
Okay, so what this rabbi said, what is an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything gets recorded in the book, is a metaphor for the prophets, the rabbis, and the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you want to be sure that you're not going to sin? Read the prophet, read the rabbis, read the Torah. Next.
Avot 4:2. Ben Azai says, run to do an easy commandment as to do a difficult one. Flee from sin, since a commandment leads to another commandment, and a sin leads to another sin. Since the reward for a commandment is another commandment, and the reward for a sin is another sin.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
That's almost like that's a tautology almost, that's like
No,
a
no,
circular
it's,
argument.
I think this is common sense, actually.
Because one thing leads, it's
To
basically saying
another.
one thing leads to another.
Because usually we're going to read that when you sin, then more likely you will have to cover it up, and it's another sin,
Yeah.
and so forth, right? So who was Ben Azai? Shimon Ben Azai. Ruth, please. Ruth?
Oh, run to do Yeah, run to do an easy commandment.
No, the
Oh,
text 13.
Oh, 13, okay. Shimon ben Azai, or simply Ben Azai, was a distinguished Tana of the first third of the 2nd century. He was a colleague of Ben Zoma and Rabbi Akiva. Like Ben Zoma, Ben Azai peered into the heavenly realm and did not escape completely unscathed.
Remember the story? The four who entered the orchard? You ever read that one? It's a good one. The four who entered the orchard.
They all died.
In other words, it means the four who study Kabbalah. And only Rabbi Akiva came out sane. It said one died, one lost his mind, the other one quit Judaism, and Rabbi Akiva was the only one who said enter in peace and exited in peace. Okay?
Never heard.
So this Ben Zoma, not so good. Okay? So keep reading, please.
Okay, does it
In
start
fact-
after body there?
But it's in fact,
Of the four great rabbis.
Second sentence, right here.
Yes,
In
that's
fact.
Oh, okay. In fact, of the 4 great rabbis, Elisha, Ben
Avuya.
Abuya, Ben Zoma, Ben Azai, and Ben Rabbi Akiva, who peered into the heavenly realm, only Rabbi Akiva emerged from the experience unscathed in faith, mind, and body. Ben Azai never married, claiming that his soul desired only Torah and that marriage would interfere with his studies. Though he was a great scholar, his colleagues never approved of his celibate existence. He was the one declaring the books of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, and Shir HaShirim, Song of Solomon, to be as sacred as the other scriptures, whereby the collection of the biblical writings, or the canon, was officially closed.
Okay? So not everything was so bad about Ben Azai, even though he was this super pious person. It looks like this is the one I think that it said that he died. I think the explanation is he got so detached from the material world that he stopped eating.
He was no longer amongst really amongst the living around the table.
He didn't even take care of his physical body because it was all about the spirit, and he died. Okay? There was this other one, there was I think it was Ben Zoma, that it was was super intellectual and he couldn't. Sometimes what happens when you study Kabbalah, you can't approach it with a intellectual approach. You just won't fit.
No.
No, it does take you
It
into
just won't
another realm
fit.
of thinking.
And
Yeah.
he said he tried to explain this using well, I wouldn't say philosophy. because
Cognitive
philosophy-
reasoning.
Yeah, and he couldn't. He lost it.
got carried away.
He lost it. He went insane trying to make sense of what he was studying. And then the other guy, Elisha ben Abuya, quit Judaism because he believed that, well, now I know the truth. I don't really need a mitzvot for that. I already, I have all this. I know how to get there. I don't need Judaism. I don't need instruction. I don't need anything. Which is not uncommon among people who study Kabbalah. They say, this is the only thing I need.
Did you notice that there used to be a lot of kids by the name of Ben and no Hugos? I just tried
Okay.
You can tell that
No
to,
comment.
to.
No, I won't.
to-
You can
to
do it
Rabbi
yourself. You
Leibel.
can do it yourself.
Text 14, Mel.
If performing mitzvot is burdensome.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that thanks to Ben Azai, we have the Ecclesiastes and Song of Solomon in the Bible
Yeah.
because the rabbis were opposed.
Why?
Well, let's start with Song of Solomon. Did you read it?
Yes.
Very racy.
It-
Huh?
Very racy.
Yes.
It's a
It's beautiful.
X-rated book.
It is. It is.
So this is the one who said, no, you're reading it wrong. This is a relationship between God and the people of Israel. Okay, let's put it in. And Ecclesiastes is such a dark
Most of it is.
Depressing
Most,
book.
I would say 98% of it is, yeah.
And Ben Azai said, no, it's sacred. He's the one who fought to incorporate it. Yes, sorry.
If performing mitzvot is burdensome for someone, then he should run to do the mitzvot which is easy for him. That will lead him to do another mitzvah, because Torah is a single body, and where part of the body is, the rest will surely be found. Ben Azai did not tell us to flee from an easy sin, because all sins are easy and pleasurable.
Yeah, but the mitzvot start small. And this is something that psychologists know in these days. For example, if you're a fundraiser, fundraisers know that the more you give, the more you're going to keep giving. So they will call you for asking you for, can you chip in with $180 for a project? And you will say, no, $180, I can't give you that. Can you give me 18? Yeah, 18 I can afford. Okay, I take it. Then they call you again for another. The more you give, the more you are going to keep giving, and you're going to start increasing the amounts you give. It's proven.
Yeah.
It's proven. It's science by this point. We're doing it, but this is not different from this. What the rabbis are saying. One mitzvah take you another one. So you start with something that is easy, and eventually you don't know how.
It just morphs.
You're
and
doing
rolls
others
into
that they are more, quote unquote, difficult to do. Right? You can start something that is not a problem, like saying a blessing before you eat something. It's not a big deal. It's not you have to come 7:30 in the morning to put on filling. Right?
True.
Saying a blessing takes 2 seconds, you can do it. Start with something small. Then eventually you're going to move to another thing because it's become natural to you.
Talking about that, so in Shtisel, which I have now finished seeing, watching, everything, every time they put anything in their mouth, whether it's a piece of gum or a glass of water, they always say blessing, but it seems to be a different blessing every time.
There's a different
Because
blessing
that's
for
what it is.
everything.
Like they say a different blessing for water than they do for
There's a different bracha for everything.
everything.
Yep.
No, the water depends what tea is the same. The cookies mezonot.
So they say that's whatever the food is.
Yeah. So you have shakonia vidvaro will be for soda, for water, for tea, for coffee. But if it's a cookie,
Yeah.
it's boremine mezonot. If it's an apple, will be borei priya etz.
Okay.
If it's potato, will be borei priya dama. And then hamotz lechiminaretz, but in that case, you will see that they're washing their hands first. Otherwise, it's not hamotz lechiminaretz.
Okay.
If they're drinking wine, they will see borei priya gafen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And whiskey?
Shakonia vidvaro.
Yeah.
Next. Text 15.
The reward is that,
Oh, I think, who was next?
oh, sorry.
John.
Sue.
No, I think Eddie did.
I thought I just read one.
Eddie did. It's my turn.
Oh, sorry, yeah,
But
confused.
That's fine.
okay,
It's,
is that correct? Let's see now. Ben Azai. Who read that?
15.
15, the reward.
Okay, I'll do that. The reward is that we are given what we want. If a person wants to do mitzvot, he is given the opportunity to do additional mitzvot. If he wants to transgress, he is given the opportunity to do more transgressions. The unusual description of the consequence of sin as a reward is relative to the person himself. He wants to sin and is rewarded with more of what he wants. Usually reward or payment comes at the completion of the job and remunerates the total effort. The reward of a mitzvah is different, for the opportunity to do another mitzvah is provided as each mitzvah is performed.
Beauty. Okay? And then we have one more text.
Avot 4:11. Rabbi Yonatan says, anyone who implements the Torah in poverty, his end will be to implement it in wealth. And anyone that disregards the Torah in wealth will in the end disregard it in poverty.
Text 17.
Rabbi Yonatan was a Tana of the 4th generation. Rabbi Yonatan studied under Rabbi Ishmael and was greatly influenced by his method. After the Bar Kokhba revolt was squashed and the Roman government forbade public Torah study, Rabbi Yonasan left Eretz Israel along with Rabbi Yehuda ben Besera, Rabbi Mesa ben Sharash, and others. This is the only place Rabbi Yonatan is cited in the Mishnah. He is frequently mentioned in Melchita and Sifra on Bamidbar, which were products of the academy of his mentor, Rabbi Ishmael.
Okay? There are different commentaries on rabbinic text.
Loyalty to Torah must be unconditional. Even if one is in abject poverty, one must be able to disassociate oneself spiritually from financial difficulty. Such a person will be able to remain loyal to Torah values, observance, and lifestyle, even when later faced with the temptations of wealth. But if one's attachment to Torah is only a societal one, influenced by one's environment and current financial situation, then when the society and financial fortunes change, the attachment to Torah can easily dissipate. Many Jews who were traditional in outlook and life, view, and religious practices while being poor, later become very distant from the Torah by financial success and upward social mobility. One can almost say that this is the story of much of American Jewry alienation from its Jewish roots and value system. The immigrant generation's attachment to Torah was mainly based on community, habit, and inertia instead of deep commitment and loyalty. Therefore, when the American Jewish community became more and more affluent, the sad distancing of that community from Torah was inexorable. Torah cannot be dependent upon poverty or affluence. Those who do not find room for Torah in their lives when they are either too rich or too poor will not find room for it when their financial condition changes.
Is this rabbi still alive?
Yeah, very prolific writer.
Is he an Orthodox rabbi?
Sorry?
Is he an Orthodox rabbi?
Yes. Modern Orthodox.
This
Okay, go
19.
ahead.
This Mishnah, who suffers from intellectual poverty, attempting to study and fulfill the word of God, in spite of limited understanding, will eventually be blessed by God with deeper intelligence.
Okay, so in other words,
Really?
yeah, this Midrash is talking about, it says that the Mishnah is not talking about material wealth at all. It says the wealth is a metaphor of intelligence.
Is it talking about knowledge?
No, she can't.
No, I borrowed all the pens from the custodian because none of us had anything to write with.
Okay.
Is he talking about intelligence or knowledge?
Knowledge.
Knowledge of
It's like
Torah.
when you study, sometimes you study,
Accumulated knowledge.
yeah, but
Study.
eventually you're going to increase the knowledge.
Okay.
That's
you
why
have-
we're here.
But you can't wait until you are a knowledgeable person in order to engage in studying Torah. You have to study Torah in whatever level you are. That's why the Torah keeps repeating itself year after year. And what happens if you read the Torah every year, you will discover new things every year.
That's true.
Yeah?
Good, bad,
Text
bad.
20.
Okay. Only one who is involved in Torah study is truly free, since Torah has the ability to teach man how to minimize his needs. Thus, a person who studies Torah enjoys the emotional wealth of one satisfied with his lot.
At least that's what the Torah is trying to do. It's, Eddie, text 21. Take us home.
In Europe, many years ago, a man was looking for a shidduch, partner in marriage, for his daughter. A certain young man was suggested as a suitable match, but after making some inquiries, the prospective father-in-law had serious doubts about him. The young man in question had a reputation as being very pious and sincere, and was known for his exceptional hasmada, diligence in Torah study. However, he did not possess a very sharp mind, and his comprehension of the Torah was not
The Talmud.
of the Talmud was not as outstanding as the prospective father-in-law had been led to believe. The gentleman was in a quandary, for he wanted only the very best bachor for his daughter, and this fellow deemed to be lacking in superior abilities. He decided to seek the counsel of Rabbi Yehoshua Leib Diskin, the rabbi of Brisk. Where's Brisk, by the way?
It's a city.
No, what country? What country is it? Poland?
Oh,
Probably.
I don't know.
No
He ex-
idea.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
He explained the situation to the rabbi,
Belarus,
who cited on Mishnah, whoever fulfills the Torah despite poverty will ultimately fulfill it in wealth. It is my understanding that this refers not only to money but to talent and ability as well, just as we are guaranteed that those who uphold Torah and Mitzvot, even though they are poor, will eventually uphold the Torah in wealth. In the very same way, those who are diligent in their studies and persevere, even though they suffer intellectual poverty, are also assured of wealth, meaning that they will attain the great heights in the Torah. Torah has the power to expand one's intellectual capabilities. The testimony of Hashem, Torah, is trustworthy, making the simple one wise. Psalms 19:8. Thus, if the young man in question is indeed diligent in his learning and sincere in his performance of mitzvot, even though he may presently be poor in comprehension, in time he will surely attain wealth, superior comprehension, and achieve prominence in Torah. I therefore suggest, concluded the rabbi, that you agree to the shidduch, because this young man will someday achieve the eminence in Torah that is so important to you. The gentleman gave his approval to the marriage, and the groom eventually became the renowned rabbi of Eshishkok, Rabbi Yosef Zundel, and the author of many works on Shulchan Aruch, including the noted Chadrei Dia.
Great deal.
But was he a good husband?
Who cares? He was never home.
He was
No,
studying.
why?
He was
He's
never home.
studying.
He was always studying.
Good question.
But that is being a good husband. Study Torah, Talmud.
Yeah,
He
while the
was a
wife
cow.
is the one working.
The one working, taking care of the child, of the house. of
Thank
the-
you.